Joining us now is the publisher and co-founder of Real Clear Politics, Tom Bevan. Tom, good to have you.
Tom, a couple of things. First of all, polls, they're worthless. They're just, you look at a poll that has,
Wait a minute.
has Jones up 9 points. The same day, you have another poll that has
How do you read them?
More up 9 points. Every exit poll is wrong. I told everybody, don't tell me the exit polls.
Right.
Because they're always wrong. So you know what I did? I started calling Alabama officials at 7:30. What's it look like? Oh, you know what? Jones didn't get the people he needed out in the black belt. He didn't get, I mean, we're having high voter turnout in all the areas that Roy Moore needs. This is going to be a big night for Roy Moore. I was getting calls from everybody at the network about 8 o'clock. Now this is, we went to sleep. Woke up at 2 o'clock. I saw breaking news from the Hollywood Reporter. Hollywood celebrating Doug Jones' win. I go, God, they really are stupid and out of touch. And then I saw the next, and he won. Everybody's wrong. Nobody knows nothing.
Well, listen.
Now your turn.
Okay.
Wow, what an intro.
Listen, in pollsters' defense, if standard polling is sort of basic math, this was a calculus equation. Okay, you had a special election in Alabama in December. You had these charges against Roy Moore.
But this comes against a backdrop, and they'll shut up. But this comes against a backdrop of 2016.
Right.
All the state polls. And everybody telling all of us, just like they told us in 2004, John Kerry was going to be the next president, from 5 to 7, telling us that Donald Trump had lost 6 out of 7 battleground states.
Well, you're not going to get me to defend exit polls. They've been bad for decades,
right.
and they're always wrong. That's sort of, 101 is don't pay attention to the exit polls because the early numbers are almost always way off. But as far as the polling goes in this race, it was all over the place, and it just depended on the pollsters just trying to figure out who was going to turn out. And people didn't, depending on what, even using the same responses, depending on what you modeled the electorate as, you could come up with a Doug Jones victory or, Roy Moore win.
And in pollsters' defense, there's just no way you can predict whether the Democrats have a historically effective ground game for black voters, or whether Donald Trump would have a historically high ground game for white working class voters in Pennsylvania to Wisconsin.
That's right. And so, look, this was a unique case, I think, where you did have, in the course of 24 hours, you had a poll showing, Roy Moore up 9, Doug Jones up 10, and one having it tied, right? In our average, it was 2.5 points, right? If you take those polls, there were 5 polls showing Roy Moore ahead, 2 showing Doug Jones ahead, and 1 having the race tied. On average, it was 2.5 points. That's a tight race, actually.
Yeah.
When you look at it, that is within the margin of error,
yeah.
right? So, which is why we had it rated as a toss-up. But again, if you look at individual pollsters, absolutely there were some big misses. And again, it was just it's a tough environment, special elections in general. But this one, with all the added complexities of it, that's what made it really, really tough.
The overall pattern in 2017 has been for Republican candidates to see a drop-off in support from Trump's 2016 levels. In the Kansas 4th District special election, the Republican margin dropped by 20 points, though in Georgia's 6th, it went up by 3. But 15-point drops for the Republicans in Montana's and South Carolina's 5th districts. Meanwhile, Democrats held...
Wasn't that dude in Montana the one that beat somebody up, beat a journalist up, got arrested?
It happens.
Yeah.
No.
And he's in Congress now?
Yes.
Wow.
Democrats held steady with their margins in New Jersey and gained 3 points in Virginia from 2016 results. And yesterday in Alabama, Republicans had a 30-point drop-off from the margin Trump won by last year.
Elise, though, they're also, we were talking after Trump's election, said, Democrats, look at the local level. You lost over 1,000 state legislative seats over the past 7-8 years. Democrats should do that now. Because, yes, we have this big race in Alabama, but you look at a lot of the local races, the state legislative races, Democrats are overperforming in Delaware County, Pennsylvania. Democrats winning county seats for the first time in 100 years. This is up and down the ballot.
Well, and the momentum is on the Democrat side right now. You look at how much anger there was motivating people in Virginia to come out and vote, motivating people in Alabama yesterday. It is staggering that red Alabama is putting in a Democratic senator in the United States Congress. I think that the sea change of that and what it means for President Trump and his agenda and the 2018 landscape is something that really should be of concern to the White House.
So, Tom, we've been talking about the numbers here, the exits, getting into some of the crosstabs, African Americans turning out in Obama 2008 levels, African American women in particular. We're talking about gender. We've been talking about education. As someone who studies these polls, which of those leaps out at you as decisive last night for Doug Jones?
Well, he needed the trifecta, right? He needed energized Democratic base. He needed to win independents. There aren't a lot of them in Alabama, but he did that by 9 points. And then he needed to have some Republican crossover votes, and he got it. I mean, you mentioned, we were talking earlier in the year about, Democrats hadn't won anything, but they've performed well in all across the country, from Kansas to South Carolina, Virginia, now Alabama. But I think the biggest potentially decisive shift is educated Republicans in those suburbs. If those folks go for Democrats in 2018, it's going to be a bloodbath for Republicans.
So help us out here. If Republicans, for the Republicans that are watching right now on the Hill, what do they need to, if you had groups they needed to focus on to make sure that they didn't get swept away by that tidal wave that Steve Schmidt was talking about earlier, what groups do they focus on specifically?
I mean, college-educated Republicans in the suburbs. I mean, that's what they have to. That's where they have to win. They can't lose those folks. 2018 is going to be about turning out your base, right? They need to get, and this is the tricky part for Republicans. They need Trump voters to come out and vote in all these states. But they can't afford to lose the college-educated Republicans in the suburbs. So they're going to have to find some way to fuse those two together in order to avoid losing the Senate and/or the House.
Is it what we said after Virginia, that the quandary all Republicans find themselves in is you can't win the primary without Donald Trump, and you can't win the general election with him?
Look, 2018 will have obviously a national overlay to it, but it's going to depend on these individual candidates in these individual districts and the individual states, right? If Republicans have good candidates who run good campaigns, you just mentioned get out the vote effort, right? They should be, the map favors them, obviously, in the Senate in particular. They should be able to defend their states and perhaps pick up a couple of seats if they can, if they have good candidates who run good campaigns. But otherwise, it could be trouble for them. Absolutely.
Tom Bevan of Real Clear Politics, thank you.
I thought he defended polls.
Absolutely.
Up next, Bob Mueller's team reportedly completes a critical phase in the Russia investigation. That is next on Morning Joe.